So can I kindly ask you to stand up? Yes, yes, wonderful. Don't worry, we're not going to do prayers, but what I want you to do is I want you to move at least to a different table and say hi to someone that you haven't met already, so that you could start a bit of a conversation for 1 minute, okay? Move to a different table, say hi to somebody that you haven't talked in these 2 days. I see that some are still on their table. It's good to move around because we're going to be sitting for the next couple of hours. And you could ask them about the dance that they were doing yesterday as well. Now, the conversation you just started, you could continue with it on the tea break. Now you could take your seats. Thank you very much. And I kindly ask you all to take out your phone. Take out your phone, because I saw there were a bit of disruption yesterday, so I kindly ask you to put your phones on silent. That is meeting protocol number 1. The second one is, if you need restroom, you could use that door or the door at the back, because the restroom is on the other side and you could use that. With that being said, my name is Magdala Makria. I would be your MC for today. And as we had it yesterday, we have a packed session today as well. And to make sure that the session runs smoothly, I kindly ask all the moderators of the session to be very keen on time, so that we could cover as many papers and ideas as much as possible. The first part of the session, we're going to have it here at the plenary, and right after that, we're going to break into 3 meeting rooms. The first one would stay here. If you have the agenda on your hand, you could follow me with that. On the session that starts at 10:30, the first session, panel 1 would be here. Panel 2 would be at the conference 2 on the 2nd floor, and panel 3 would be on conference 4, room 4 on the 3rd floor. The same rooms that we've used yesterday. Without having additional visas, we traveled yesterday to different parts of the world, and that's what we're going to be doing today. But we're not going to be traveling physically, we're going to be traveling through the papers and the ideas that are going to be presented for today. To moderate the first half of the session, we have on the stage Professor Damto Tafarra. Professor Damto Tafarra, the floor is yours. As I said earlier, time is of the essence. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that warning. I hope I will still be left with some friends after the end of this event, because I will be very clinical when it comes to time. Good morning, everyone. So the first part of the presentation, for some reason, is not available. So we go straight into the first presentation. That first presentation is equitable partnerships in higher education between Japan and Africa by Professor Akiyoshi and Stoda, who happens to be here. I hope Prof. Naoki is also online, but I'm not sure. Good to see you. Wonderful. So the floor is yours. What's going to happen is that I will give you a warning when you are left with 2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, so some howlings are there. They're okay? Do you hear me still? Okay.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, let me go. So we are the kind of team of the 3 people, and our topic is equitable partnership with the higher education between Japan and Africa. And I'm impressed about very big change in the Addis Ababa in the last 5 or 6 years. Lots of buildings are actually done by the the collaboration with China, and this is really fascinating for one of the citizens of East Asia. Okay. So then, could you go to the next slide? Okay. So let me explain the background. So first of all, we are proud that we don't have the no colonial legacy, at least with directly with Africa. So that is one of the point. We can have some advantage in order to make an equal collaboration with you. And also we have a resource asymmetry. I will explain later. And then the difference in the systems and languages. So I know that you have three official languages, but there are many different languages as well. And we chose Japanese language for even the science language. And also the equality in principle, asymmetry in practices. So that we try to be equal partnership, but the reality is not that so pure. Okay, so please go to the next slide. So we started the active engagement to Africa in terms of research collaboration in 1970s as a part of the ODA-driven cooperation, like tropical disease or the mining or everything. And from 2000, we are more going to the research collaboration for the development. So we are doing more for the research, but still this is mainly focusing on the purpose of the development. And we have some key projects in the limited number of the countries, and we will explain later on this. Then why Japan-Africa partnership is important for us now is that, as you know, that Africa has a big population growth and SDI potential. And now the Japanese population is 125 million, or the 6 million. And this is relatively small, a bit smaller than Ethiopia, okay? But our 30% of our population is over 65 years old, you know. So only the 18 years old population is only 1 million people. So it is a very small number. And so that's the reason why we need a kind of a collaboration with you, with the very potential and also the youth population. And we are trying to change our relationship from the aid to knowledge co-creation. That is what we are trying to do. And we have three members. So what I can explain about my university, Tohoku University, this is one of the top research university, national one. And there we are now basically making the partnership based on individual research projects. And that is mainly funded by the government for as I mentioned, the research for the development. And also, we are trying to strengthen the student exchange, and humanities social science is also very important because we are now trying to know more about the details and the diversity of the African continent. And also, we already have some local association of our alumni, African alumni, in our local area. So because we already have the 30 years history to invite the international students from Africa. And now we are also adding to the national funding. The university itself is trying to support the welcoming the youngsters from Africa in order to activate our research and exchange. And then we seek the new partnership with the very strategic manner, especially for for example, the Nigeria with agriculture sciences, and also the medical science and life sciences with Egypt, because as a kind of top-down diplomatic channel. And also, finally, I am now involved in providing the program taught in English in the undergraduate program. So one of the weaknesses of us is that the very limited number of the program taught in English for a long time. But now we are completely changing our mind, and that is what we are trying to do in our university. Let me hand over to Umemiya. Umemiya, please.
Thank you very much, Professor. I hope you can hear me. So The next slide is about the policy frameworks. In 1993, the Japanese government took the initiative of holding this Tokyo International Conference on African Development, or TICAD in short, in Tokyo, inviting the top leaders of African countries. By 2025, TICAD had been held 9 times and had facilitated national-level partnership between Japan and Africa. And their higher education partnerships and collaboration have always been a key focus of these partnerships. And Japan's partnership policy with Africa is set at the cabinet level through this TICAD process towards multi-stakeholder engagement. It is led by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Education, Japan, and they are primarily responsible for higher education research. And also, national agencies such as Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, Japan Science and Technology Agency, JST, Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, JSPS, and the Japan Agency for Medical Research and Development, AMED, provide project funding and access actual project performance in line with government policy guidelines. And various international stakeholders, including the African Union, the United Nations agencies, and the World Bank, are also invited to contribute to the development of these policy and frameworks. In the next slide, this is a list of key programs between Japan and Africa. The first program is the Pan-African University Institute for Basic Sciences, Technology and Innovation. We call it PAUSTI in short, hosted by Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, JKUAT, since 2014. In partnership with Japanese government and universities, PAUSTI provides a postgraduate hub of research and innovation, featuring a highly diverse faculty and students drawn from across Africa. This collaboration is based on one of Japan's flagship ODA-based higher education projects in Africa to strengthen and transform JKUAT into an independent autonomous university since 1980s. Then in 2008, the Japanese government launched the Science and Technology Research Partnership for Sustainable Development, or SAPREPS, to support research partnerships between Japan and Africa, focusing on cutting-edge scientific research into global issues such as energy, the environment, biological resources, disaster prevention, and infectious diseases. A number of joint research projects are ongoing between universities in Africa and Japan, including the one mentioned by Professor Enizawa, Tohoku University just now. And then in 2014, the Japanese government launched the master's degree and internship program of the African Business Education Initiative for Youth from Africa, ABE Initiative, with the aim of supporting young people who can contribute to the development of African industries. Japan's initiatives for the development of higher education are also continuing. In 2010, the Egypt-Japan University of Science and Technology, EJUST, was established in Egypt, with major Japanese universities committed to its development. By 2025, EJUST has become the top-ranked university in Egypt in the Times Higher Education World University Rankings. The Egyptian government and the Japanese government then jointly established a scholarship program for students from Africa to study at EJUST. Then in 2025, the Japanese Ministry of Education, JICA, and the World Bank jointly released a new initiative called the Africa-Japan Initiative for Science and Technology Partnership in Research and Education. It's a long name, AJ Inspire in short. This initiative is a new one, academic network between Japan and Africa, in which EJUST, JKUAT, and Stellenbosch University act as a hub for networking and collaboration among African countries and with Japanese universities. The last one here is the AJ Core, Africa-Japan Collaborative Research, initiated by JST in collaboration with the National Research Foundation of South Africa. The project supports multilateral research frameworks connecting 3 or more countries, Japan, South Africa, and at least one other African country. Now, in the next slide, I want to present another case of Japanese university, Sophia University, one of Japan's leading private research universities. Now, Sophia University has partnerships with 17 universities in 14 countries in Africa. The number of agreements with African institutions remains relatively small among private universities. However, among private universities in Japan, Sophia ranks among those with the largest number of partnerships with African universities. At Sophia University, the Graduate School of Global Studies and other institutions host many researchers specializing in African studies, having long maintained collaborative research with African institutions. And then with a growing emphasis on partnership with Africa from the top management of the university since 2014, Sophia has offered 50 Africa-related courses at the undergraduate and graduate level. The university also conducts collaborative online international learning, co-ed programs, and short-term study tours with its 17 African partner universities. The short-term social engagement programs are conducted twice annually during long vacations and have taken students to Cote d'Ivoire, South Africa, Cameroon, among others. We also hold this event called Africa Weeks every year, in which we organize a series of events and symposiums related to Africa in collaboration with embassies of African countries in Tokyo, AU, AFDB, and other stakeholders. And then based on these achievements, Sophia applied to Ministry of Education's Inter-University Exchange Project and was selected as the only private university to receive the funding. Beginning in 2025, last year, Sophia is implementing this project called SAFIX, Sophia Africa Future Initiative for collaborations with 7 universities in 6 African countries. Over the coming 5 years, Sophia plans to send over 600 students to Africa and host over 250 students from Africa, both through in-person mobility and online. So now I would like to pass the microphone to my colleague, Mai.
Thank you. So as previously discussed, Tohoku University is deepening its research ties, and Sophia University is expanding its faculty and student exchange. However, the bridge between Japan and Africa remains largely one way. So most current mobility involves African students and the scholars traveling to Japan. The reverse, I mean the Japanese students heading to Africa institutions remain remarkably limited. Why does this gap exist? While African scholars often navigate traditional Western partnership with ease, Japan represents as a unique structure barrier, for example, language. Many Japanese universities are still catching up in terms of internationalization. So administrative procedure, internal documents, and even core classes are often available only in Japanese. So this lack of English medium infrastructure acts as a bottleneck. So as a result of that, as of 2024, the students from the African continent are projected to account for a mere 0.8% of the Japanese traditional Japan total international student population. So next slide, please. Yeah, this is a prime example of triangular cooperation between the African Union, the Kenyan government, and the Japanese government via JICA. So PAUSD is not just a separate entity, it is physically and academically woven into the JQuat campus because they share the laboratories and infrastructure. So approximately 80% of the faculty members who are teaching at PAUSD are actually JQuat staff members. So this partnership works because it's built on the foundation of the historical trust, as Professor Mamiya mentioned before. So JQuat has collaborated with Japan since its very inception, so creating a level of comfort that encourages Japanese universities to engage. And furthermore, because the PAUSD is an AU Center of Excellence, so it recruits the highly skilled students from across 40 African countries. So this concentration of talent has led to a surge of interest from Japanese universities in the post-COVID-19 era. However, we see the same pattern. The positive talent to Japan, but the reverse flow is still the exception. So this brings us to our broader challenges. The rise of BRICS, particularly China, in the African higher education sector means that the Japanese comparative advantage is no longer guaranteed. So we have to ask ourselves, do we compete for influence or do we seek collective impact by co-creating with other international donors? Yeah, so the presentation made by Professor Gift from University of Zambia was also mentioned about collective impact. So I think that collective impact is also very important from the perspective of African continent. And another question is, how do we secure long-term funding? So engagement from the private sector remains still very limited. And finally, we need to break out of the STEM silo. So while Japan's strength in the STEM is very well known, a truly equitable partnership must include the humanities and social sciences. So to wrap up this presentation, our goal is a transition from aid to co-creation. But co-creation is impossible without an equitable partnership. So lastly, again, equitable partnership is essential and necessary for knowledge co-creation between Japan and Africa. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for the presentation and also finishing on time. Thank you so much. So what's going to happen is that we will continue to the second presentation, and then I would open it up for a Q&A, and it goes on that way. The next presentation is from my colleagues in Malaysia, Bibliometric Insights in International Student Mobility in Southeast Asian Higher Education by Associate Professor Dr. Lee Mi Tien. Here as well, we have Professor Dr. Morshidi Sirat, but this work also includes Dr. Sui Liu and Dr. Devisaki Anamali. I hope I didn't torture the names. So the floor is yours. I understand that Professor Tien is presenting. Professor Tien, the floor is yours.
All right, I would like to invite my co-author, Mr. Liu, to share the PowerPoint, please. All right, thank you very much. Good morning and good day. I'm Lee Tien from National Higher Education Research Institute, University Science Malaysia, as well as Commonwealth Tertiary Education Facility Malaysia, along with a School of Educational Studies, University Science Malaysia. My co-authors and myself today are very happy having the opportunity to share a presentation entitled Bibliometric Insights into International Student Mobility in Southeast Asian Higher Education. Next slide, please. So the objective of this presentation is to provide a systematic understanding by presenting the bibliometric evidence of how Southeast Asia is positioned within global international student mobility scholarship. Next slide, please. Okay, so basically the content of the presentations are divided into 4 parts: introductions, methodology, result and discussion, and end with conclusion. Next slide, please. Okay, so basically we define or operationalize international student mobility, generally described as short-term academic exchange and full degree enrollment abroad, the integration of international students along with physically crossing international borders to pursue education. According to UNESCO 2025, in 2023, internationally mobile students reached approximately 6.9 million, where we can see that Western countries remain dominant as host destinations. What about in Southeast Asia? So recently, Malaysia and also Singapore come up to the top 2 Southeast Asian societies that manage to attract substantial numbers of international students, especially those from mainland China. So it is timely for us to present or to conduct a bibliometric review on ISM in the Southeast Asia region, particularly on understanding the region contributions to and the developments within global ISM scholarship. Next slide, please. So this presentation was guided by 4 main research questions. What are the publication trends in ISM? Who are the key authors, institutions, countries or regions contributing to ISM scholarship? What is the current collaboration between authors, institutions and countries or regions contributing to ISM? As well as what major research teams have shaped the development and growth of ISM. Next slide, please. Okay, so the conceptual framework was guided by Prisma 4. As you can see here, we guided by the topic students' mobility in Southeast Asian countries. Our scope limited to Scopus database. Our search field is we use a title, abstract, and also keywords where we limit to articles and also review papers. Yeah. All right. So as you can see from the slide, this is our search strings, and data was extracted on 30 September 2025. So basically, the first search, we able to collect 385 articles and also review papers. After screening, we identify the most relevant papers that regarding to ISM. We need to delete or exclude 134 papers. Then we only get 251 after the screening process. Next slide. Okay, so the methods one, we use this bibliometric analysis. The reason is that bibliometric analysis able to illustrate research productivity, uncover research clusters, and trace the development of ISM as a field. The data actually collected from year 2005 until 2025 in the Scopus database. We use 2 software for data cleaning, Bibliometrica and also OpenRefine. The purpose is we want to fill the missing values to reduce the redundancy and overlapping in terms of their names. Sometimes they may use different names or different affiliations, so we need to do some clean up before we do the data analysis. And for the data analysis, we use 3 software to perform what we want to show in the bibliometric analysis. They are Bibliometrica, WAS Viewer, and also we use R, Bibliometrics R package, to gain the performance analysis, co-occurrence analysis, co-authorship analysis, as well as the thematic map. Next slide. All right, so this is the descriptive data that we've found while we searched through bibliometric analysis. So as you can see here, the article span from 2005 to 2025, able to collect all the papers from 174 journals in Scopus database, and we managed to get 251 papers. So out of these 251 papers, we can see that we have a total of 616 authors. So out of these 616 papers, about 11.2% the papers appear with solo author. So means 1 author for the paper. And then international co-authorship, 26.69%. So this shows a moderate level of engagement, global engagement. But surprisingly, when we look at local co-authorship is much higher than international co-authorship. Is about 46%. So the result review is strongly domestic co-authorship among the researchers in ISM. Next. Now, this is the growth trend of publication. As you can see from this figure, it shows two important results. The blue histogram shows the total publication, where the orange curve show the total citation. Yeah? As you can see, from year 2005 to 2011, the publication is relatively a small number with less than 2 digits. But when come to year 2012 until 2014, the numbers is getting more and more. But surprisingly, we can see that there is a surge, increase drastically in terms of total citation. So we also can see the same scenario happens between 2019 until 2022. Yeah, we also can see drastically improve in terms of total publication and also total citation. But there is another trend that we can examine after 2022, where we can see that there is a lag effect, especially the total citation. Yeah? But of course, we understand that citation might take time, but it also opened the opportunity call for more international partnership and collaborations in terms of publication and also research work. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the top productive source titles, meaning that the papers submit to what journals to be published, papers regarding to ISSM. As you can see here, these are the top journals that the authors used to publish regarding ISM. And these journals actually are high impact with, although only 50 papers, if you look at this total publication, this part TP, All right, so mostly these journals are WOS, Web of Science, and quartile 1, 2, 3, which is good in terms of their impact. Yeah? Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the top 20 cited articles. Yeah? So from here, we can see that most of the authors actually, we are still heavily relying on Western researchers, although we have some co-authorship there. So the information here is very clear, is that Southeast Asian researchers need to have more opportunities to publish work together with international scholars in the area of ISM. Yeah? Next slide, please. All right, and then these are the top 10 active authors, mostly from Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, and some of them, you see here, Australia, the country Australia, but the authors initially are from Vietnam. Yeah, so basically it's still dominated by these few societies in Southeast Asia. Yeah, all right, next. Okay, these are the top 10 active institutions. As we can see here, the universities from Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Thailand, and also Indonesia, dominated the publications in ISM. And we can see that Malaysia, out of these 10, Malaysia, we have 5 universities actively publish paper in ISM. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think this table is very much related to the previous table that I showed just now, where Malaysia remained as the top 1 productive countries in publishing ISM, with the total publication of 105 papers throughout 2005 to 2025. Followed by Thailand and Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore, Philippines, Brunei, and Laos PDR. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is about co-authorship analysis by authors. So we can see 2 clusters here. Cluster 1 is Singapore-centered, and cluster 2 is about inter-Asian mobility. So basically for cluster 1, Singaporean researchers focus more on governors and also Chinese students' mobilities, when inter-Asians is more to mobility system and also emerging Southeast Asian destinations. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is co-authorship analysis by institutions, yeah, how the institutions work together, yeah, in terms of their co-authorship. So we can see 4 clusters here, okay, differentiated by different colors. As you can see, cluster 1 in red color, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, mobility support and intercultural preparation. Cluster 2, Singapore-centered transnational migration and emerging Southeast Asian destination. Cluster 3 in blue color, Malaysia-based South-South mobility and institutional strategy. And Cluster 4, Australia-Vietnam collaborative mobility and Indo-Pacific engagement. All right, so next one is co-authorship analysis by countries. So you can see there are 2 groups, 2 clusters here. In red color, there is intra-Asian mobility, yeah, by emerging Southeast Asian destination. And this cluster, in addition to Southeast Asia, we also have South Korea is here, yeah. So means that the authors or the researchers from South Korea work together with the researchers with these countries. Cluster 2, Australia, Malaysia, strategic internationalization and regional education hub formation.
Professor Teen, can you hear me?
Next slide, please. Okay, so
Can you hear me, Professor
I'm sorry,
Teen?
the figure is quite complicated here, but I hope you can see the keywords inside the map. Yeah.
Can you hear
All
me?
right. So it's about the co-occurrence analysis by author keywords. Yeah. So we can see there are 3 clusters here. So what are the important keywords is still parcel around internationalization and students' mobility. Cluster 2, curriculum in green color. This is the one. Yeah. Curriculum, innovation and competence development, followed by cluster 3, higher education system and migration. So we get this result based on the keywords provided by the authors in the published paper.
Professor Teen, can you hear me? Professor Teen, can you hear me?
Next slide, please. All right, so this is about the thematic. Yeah, okay. So this is about the thematic map. Okay, our focus is in this area in the basic theme. Basic themes here means that it is important and is relevant. Yeah, the field is relevant, but somehow or other it is still underdeveloped, and these are the future or these are the possible, the areas of ISM that the researcher could explore further. Yeah, so South mobility has become a new form of international student mobility, and Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam have emerged as international hubs. So our research direction could be Korean students' experiences who study in Southeast Asia, doctoral education, international students in the Philippines who study in Southeast Asia, English learning and teacher training in the context of internationalization. All right, next. Okay, so based on this presentation, so what we could say that is we can produce several areas of future studies, including future studies in terms of doing bibliometrics review like this could employ multiple databases, perform comparative analysis between Southeast Asia and other regions, perform systematic literature review and content analysis, knowing that the papers is only 251, examine policy framework, governance structures and transnational agreements, explore underrepresented themes as what I mentioned just now in the quadrant of basic themes, such as teacher education, doctoral education, English learning, and soft power in higher education, explore equity, accessibility, and sustainability in transnational learning. However, these presentations related to bibliometric review, we have certain limitation as well, where our main focus solely on the Scopus database. We only look at articles published in Scopus, in text journal, and we did not include book chapters, book, or even written in a local language. The analysis may only be indicative of conceptual interlinkages. Next. So with this, I end my presentations. Thank you very much, Prof. Tentil. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Tien. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, now.
Very clear.
Good. So what we're going to do now is I will be opening up the floor for a chat, a discussion. And I will open the floor. We have at least a solid amount of time for a conversation today. So the floor is open. Any questions, comments?
There is a very big challenge with now more and more partners entering and operating in Africa. And I actually learned about that in my own research as well. And it imposed a huge administrative burden on the universities when they have to work with multilaterals, bilaterals, and also foundations and even enterprises now, all trying to engage with universities. So I was wondering if you can share a little bit more about how Japanese colleagues are trying to address this issue and coordinating efforts, not just among the different partners and actors in the higher education space. Thank you.
Let me compound that statement. Thank you very much.
Let me try. Thank you very much for the very important point. And I also heard your presentation, and that was really, really fascinating, Dr. Zen. And the reason why I took this answer is that I am independent from JICA, so I can be more honest. And what I should say is that we have I want to stress here in our presentation that we need to have long-term view and also the much more kind of collaborative attitude towards everybody. So that is what we are aiming for, but what we are not achieving at all. Right? That's a headache we have. And of course, we are one of the country with a highly, impacted by the new public management. So the many performance indicators are there, and we are highly, highly short-sighted. But try to claim that we want to be long-term, and I'm really observing that China is now moving from short-term vision to the long-term vision. That is what I am learning from the dialogue with the African colleague and also the Asian colleague here. And there, let me explain that some experiences what we have in the partnership with the Southeast Asia. And as you may know that Japan has a lot of relationship with partly colonization with the Southeast Asia, and we have a long relationship with them. But unfortunately, we say that this is a kind of hub and spoke model, means that there are China Southeast Asia relationship, Korea Southeast Asia relationship, and the Japan Southeast Asia relationship, and we have a so-called ASEAN plus 3 framework, but still we are really competing each other between the 3 countries. That is a reality we are facing with. But at the same time, we know that this is not working, and especially Africa, the Asian influence or the Asian partnership is still in a process of developing, and this is much weaker than the relationship with, for example, Western world so-called. So I think that there are lots of opportunity that we can reflect what we have done in the past, and then what we can do for the future. But we need to have some kind of very equitable the discussion, not only among with the African colleague, but also within East Asian colleagues. That's what I am thinking about. Any comments from you?
Thank you very much for your question and comment. Yeah, I would like to add some point what Professor Yonezawa said. Yeah, so I'm standing here as a JICA expert, but this is my personal opinion. Yeah, from the JICA view. But yeah, I think that the JICA is not the solid partner with Africa from Japanese side, because as we explained, any other agencies such as JST or JSPS are also trying to collaborating with Japanese African universities, yeah, through using the government fund. So I think that we have to discuss within Japan as well, yeah, how to collaborate with the African continent. And the equitable partnerships, the definition is really different from the viewpoint of the organization and individual. So I think that that kind of definition should be discussed among us with the Japanese and the African and also Chinese, Korean, and any other Southeast Asian countries. Yeah, that is my personal opinion. Thank you.
I think Prof. Naoki is still with us if he wants to chime in. Okay. All right. I think any questions? I would like to further a conversation.
But the question I have, and that stems from my own work, is there seems to be a preference for the northern partners or the global north to work with flagship universities, the mighty, the big, the ones that already have made a name on the African continent and footprints. But there are those universities that are struggling, almost lesser known, the private, but also the public. What is the criteria that you use to select your partners? Thank you.
For the Tohoku University, a public university, has a lot of pressure to improve the research performance now. And for that purpose, most of the, to be honest, the strategic partnership with the university with the high citation publication means Western countries. So that's the reality. And also we are now trying to make a geographical balance, means that two-thirds of our international students from mainland China. And I think this is a very good, and of course we are a very good community member. They are a very good community member, and they are supporting our research. But at the same time, we wanted to expand and diversify our scopus more. And then now we are facing with challenging the kind of partnership with India, to be honest, because India already has a reputation of the high talents and research achievement. And then Africa and Latin America is next step. So that is the reality you are facing with. But I really feel that when I come to Africa several times, and then this is very, very difficult for the Japanese ordinary faculty members in Japan to understand what's going on in Africa. This is very, very difficult. And we have a very, very stereotyped idea on the Africa. Maybe we cannot distinguish the different countries. And the same with the African people, that maybe it is very difficult to understand the difference between Korea and Japan and China from Africa, right? So then the reason why that the humanities social science, although we are still very, very focused on strategically the STEM field, is that we want to have much more mutual understanding or the deeper understanding in order to strengthen our relationship. That is what I can do from the perspective of the national university. So let me hand over Umemiya-san.
The question is, who sets the agenda in this collaboration? I know Japan goes to many countries. You work with different universities. Who sets this agenda? Is it the government? Is it the universities? How do you pick your partners? Thank you so much. Similar to a question from my colleagues who asked earlier, but who sets the agenda? How do you pick your partners? Is it the government? Is it the policy? I'm curious and intrigued. Thank you so much.
The market or the network of the partnership among the bottom-up level researchers are so weak, means that we highly rely on a direction by the government. And then Toda-san may say something.
Thank you very much for your question. From the JICA's viewpoint, we we think important is that the alumni network. I mean, any African student or faculty staff who have studied in Japan before, so that the faculty members are easier to connect with those alumni and create the trust partnership between. So that is what JICA is focusing on. Am I answering to your question?
Yeah. The government, as articulated, and also the reason given, because there is a disconnect, big disconnect, and the government tries to bridge that gap. Now, Q&A is finished. Now we're going to the next presentation. The next presentation is Professor Sheen. I hope you are there, Professor Sheen.
This conference, Professor Damtu Tapara, and I'm pleased to see many colleagues there, Professor Yonezawa and Professor Tian Navy and Moshidi Shiret and many others. It is great. My topic today's presentation is about the localization, because the main theme of this conference is about the good partnership, equal partnership between Global South and Global North. Even in South Korea, although we developed the research capacity and research productivity a lot during short time, but still we have serious problem for developing our own research here. Especially, we heavily rely on Western theories for our academic development. I want to talk about that issue today. For my time management, I recorded my presentation already, so I will turn it on right now.
JC, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you.
I think the volume of the sound on this end is not good. Can you run it? Can you run it yourself?
Let me see.
Or present it yourself?
Let me try. Yeah, okay, I will try.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I move on to my first slide.
Yeah.
Can you see the first slide?
We see the second slide. Or the first
slide? Second slide.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, carry on.
Knowledge is the basis for our social and industrial development. So knowledge creation is very critical for our development in human society. Here, when we produce new knowledge, it is based for the producing new knowledge here, and economic and social development, and it is based for our education. This is an ecosystem, so that these three sectors should be co-develop each other. More specifically, when you develop new theory, you can use the theory for your human resource training, which is education, or you can apply the theory for industrial development or social development. And then, based on the theory and your practice, you can develop new theory here. So it is a kind of cycle system, from theory to practice and practice to new theory. Here I have two dimensions of knowledge. One is theoretical knowledge, the other one is practical knowledge. One is locally developed knowledge, the other one is foreign developed knowledge here. If you rely on theory-based knowledge, but if it is from the Western academic community, then academic dependence happens in your own academic community, right? When you try to develop your own practice and use the foreign developed knowledge, then policy borrowing, for example, benchmarking, best practice, etc. from the Western or foreign practice, right? Here, when you develop your own local knowledge, but it is basically, if it is theory-based knowledge, then decoupling happens between knowledge and practice, right? So what we want for our social and industrial development, we need knowledge-based practice development, which is based on locally developed and practice-oriented knowledge here. If you have this type of knowledge, then it has close association between your knowledge development and your social development or industrial development. Here, when you use the foreign developed theory to your practice development, it is quite complicated because there's a decoupling between theory and practice. And you might experience a lot of trial and errors because the theory developed in the West or in foreign countries. Your local practice is totally different from foreign context, right? So from here to here, it has a lot of trials and errors in your social development. And here, if you want to develop your own society based on foreign developed theory, you have basically 1, 2, 3 stages of translation or transformation. For example, when you use the foreign developed knowledge, you need translation because the knowledge, theory-based knowledge is not clear what that theory means. So you need translation process, and you need transformation process in your local context, and you also transformation in practical context. So that from here to here is far away, right? I will give you one simple example. Let's say 15 years ago, flipped learning was very popular topic for most of education researchers. But flipped learning was basically developed in the United States, right? So how can we apply the flipped learning concept in South Korea? We need 3 stages. One stage is translation. What does the flipped learning means in our local context? And we developed some application method to apply in local context. And then we need to develop after that, the flipped learning concept may contribute to our practice development in South Korea. So the different stage, translation, transformation, and transformation in practice. Okay, so far I emphasized why localization process or localization is critical for social or industrial development. And in our research, we have some stages like research agenda setting, and we adopt some theoretical perspective, and we have our own research methods, and we try to interpret the finding based on our research, and we extract some implication and propose some policy recommendation. In this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stages of research, for example, if we heavily rely on Western or foreign developed theory, we are in trouble here, adoption of a theoretical perspective, because most of the theory part is covered by Western theories or foreign developed theories in our own research. Even I conduct the research in my own context. And then when we propose some policy recommendation for practical development, I have to also borrow some idea from the theoretical perspective, which is developed in the West or in foreign countries, right? So we are in trouble for policy recommendation here, because in this case, policy recommendation may not practical, actually. I just some 4 research topics to cover that topic related to localization of social science research. The first topic was about the localization of educational administration research in the context of South Korea. I analyzed many textbooks in the field of educational administration here after the independence from Japan's colonial culture published in South Korea. Here, in my textbook analysis, I found over 100 textbooks on the topic related to educational administration. And then here is the thematic areas in the books: basic introduction, motivation theory, leadership theory, organization theory, systems and policy, school and classroom management, and other topics here. In the textbook, in each thematic area, foreign theories are here like this one, and local theories here. Especially in education system and policy area, we have a relatively large share of the local theory here, and school and classroom management here, relatively large share here. But in general, I would say that 90% of the theory in the textbook borrowed from the Western or foreign theories here. which means that our textbook heavily rely on foreign theories. Although educational administration is very much practice-oriented field. See, you can see the changing trend of the foreign theory here, local theory here, and they are slightly local theory is growing here. Another piece of research is educational administration research. It is not textbook analysis. In this article, I analyzed the articles published in the field of educational administration. Yeah. We have 1,500 articles from in the field of educational administration from 1983 to 2017. In each section, introduction part, theory part, method and data part, finding part, discussion and conclusion part here. From there, in the article, you see the percentage here. Local reference in the article here. Okay. So you can compare both. Introduction and proposed research proposed part is more highly rely on local reference. In theory part, you see the quite similar percentage. Method and data part basically from the local reference here. From this one, you have some hypothetical idea that the research in the field of educational administration, they use the data from local data source, but see, slight higher percentage here, they borrow the theory from the West. Okay, you can see the changing trend. Foreign reference here, blue line, local reference here, red line. So, although we can observe the growing trend of the local reference in education administration research here, still foreign reference is here, right? And show the local reference in theory section. Although the local reference is slightly growing, but still you see the large share of the reference are from Western theories, 40%. So the article, and I tried to analyze policy recommendation in the field of educational policy research, because policy recommendation should be very practical. Then my question is, how much of the research propose some practical recommendation for policy development in South Korea? So I analyzed the policy research in between 2011 through 2015. I found over 300 articles in journals like Journal of Educational Administration, Finance, Education Politics, Korean Education, Korean Journal of Education. From the 364 articles, I tried to coordinate these articles based on the depth of the policy recommendation to how much they provide some practical implication, practical policy recommendation for practice development here. And no policy recommendation, 0. Level 1 means low policy recommendation, and mid-level, high-level recommendation. What we want is high relevant policy recommendation from academic research here. You see some areas of policy analysis, policy content analysis, policy making and implementation, policy evaluation, and others. Here, no recommendation, low recommendation, mid-level recommendation, high-level recommendation. You can see the difference across different policy areas here. In general, I can say that not many articles provide practically highly recommendable suggestion for practice development. About 20% here, 23%, 20%, 10%, 21%. So that in general, although we pursue highly practical policy recommendation from policy research, in reality, not many articles provide highly practical recommendation. That's what I found from my third study. My first article is I expanded the scope from the education research toward social science research in general. So here, you can see the geometry of the social science research in terms of publication. Some papers published in Web of Science or Scopus journal, as Professor Tian-Mei analyzed in her presentation. Korea Citation Index journal here, and book publication here. Social science humanity in this case, in this field, we heavily rely on in KCI journal or publication. While the bio and health science, life of science, math, computer, and physics and engineering, they heavily rely on international journal publication in Scopus or Web of Science journals. Here I selected the time period from 1988 to 2017 in the field of sociology and political science, public administration, and educational research. Here, sociology and political science is pretty much pure and research area.
Can you hear me, Jesse?
Administration.
Can you hear me, Jesse?
And research both area.
Can you hear me?
I called it reference, federal reference is local or not. Research agenda is local or not. Theory adapted local or no. I am almost there now. Here, share of the local knowledge base in each field. You can see the growing trend, slightly growing trend of local knowledge base in 4 areas. See? But in terms of how much they rely on their own theory, here, local theory development, here, local research agenda development, which means that many of these large share of the papers covering the local research agenda. But you see, education field is 25% of the knowledge is from local theory. And political science is below 20%. Sociology below 10%, which means that most of the social science research in South Korea, our topic is about the Korean related issues. But our theory is heavily rely on mostly Western theories. So in terms of theory development, we are still heavily rely on Western theories. Although we developed a lot of research agendas for national development or industrial development in South Korea. And yes, how we use the imported theory in our own research. For example, understanding and expansion of social phenomena, interpretation of social phenomena, proposing alternatives, and critiques and reconstruction of theories, and theory development and expansion here. As you can see, basically we adopt Western theories to explain our own social phenomena, but local theory development is tiny percent. Okay. Now, I will emphasize that locally embedded theory development.
Jesse, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, please summarize in 1 minute. And we will open it for Q&A later. So, would you like to summarize it in 1 minute?
Yeah, I'll do it. And social science researchers are recommended to closely work with practitioners and develop their own theory. In conclusion, one-size-fits-all does not work in social science research, and in-depth understanding on local context is very critical and foundational basis for social contribution, and how to interpret the theory in local context are our responsibility as a social science researchers. Thank you for your listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that excellent presentation, JC. Hang on there. There will be a next presentation from India, and then we'll open it for a conversation. You want to go there? Let me call in Prof. Arti Srivastava from the National Institute of Educational Planning and Admin from India. She will be presenting on reimagining knowledge futures, India, Africa, and the decolonization of research. You are more than welcome.
So good morning, everybody. I'm very happy and thankful to Professor Tefera for having invited me on presenting my views on, how do we reimagine knowledge futures, India, Africa, and decolonization of research. So let me begin by saying that knowledge is a global public good. This has been said by Joseph Stiglitz, the Nobel laureate in 1999. And why India and Africa? Because India and Africa have a historical, continuance. The moorings of our independence, the father of the nation, actually got a lot of insights when he was here in Africa. So when we talk about reimagining, so the pathways are, right from recovery to mourning to dreaming, commitment and action. So we at this whole thing of reimagining are between dreaming and commitment. We are dreaming and committing slowly and gradually into this whole path of, new research pathways. And knowledge cannot be a monopoly of only the North. Knowledge has to be from all parts of the world, and so we need to build an oligarchy so that we can have strong pathways to the future. So global knowledge production continues to be shaped by historical colonial legacies that have structured academic systems and institutions across regions. So this has been talked about by many presenters since yesterday, so I will not delve deeply into that. Then institutions in the global North dominate research funding, publication networks. One of the professors from Senegal said that, despite, that being a francophone country, many of them publish more in the anglophone. So the publication networks are higher there. The academic recognitions limiting equitable participation is, of course, a consequence of it. As a result, scholarship from Global South is often marginalized or undervalued in global academic discourse. So we don't see voices from the Global South really, shaping the discourses of, human interest in the knowledge world. So in response, there has been a growing call to decolonize knowledge systems and create more inclusive forms of knowledge production. So this is a call from the South to how to create new knowledge system. Now, let me give some data around that. UNESCO Science Report 2021 says that North America has 4,432 million public publications, per million. Africa has 124 per million. South Asia has 263 million. China has 1,307 per million. And India has 253 per million. More alarming is the data on Nobel Prizes. 40% of the Nobel Prizes go to the Americans, and the rest 25 go to the Europeans. So we see the bias that is already there. Persistent global research hierarchies, is something that inhibits knowledge production. So the global academic system is characterized by deeply entrenched research hierarchies that privilege institutions, scholars from the global North. So we need to now look at that and re-examine and place these priorities in the global South itself. There are persistent inequalities in access to research fundings, publication platforms, and agenda setting power. So this also needs to be relooked and redefined. So these structural imbalances raise an important question: can India-Africa academic partnerships provide an alternative and more equitable model of collaboration? Yes, of course, because now, why this can happen is because basic and discipline-based knowledge is actually, transcending into application and transdisciplinary knowledge. So, application is more important, of the knowledge that is being generated, and the transdisciplinary that, you should have both problem solving. The issue can be resolved from any of the disciplinary across the boundaries, and try to see, how, we can look at this part of the, problem solving of the nations, So India-Africa academic collaboration, when we analyze, we have potential for pessimist justice, So we need to look at, new methodologies and new kinds of, not only methodologies, but new kinds of ways of approaching this knowledge also. So we have, points for a Pacific Justice and role of South-South cooperation. India was leading, the G20 in the year 2023, and still plays a very active role in redefining lot of cooperations across sectors. Education being one of them, very, very highly valued, and within education, research is one of the important verticals that is, which actually plays out in a very defining way. So we have to identify opportunities and the structural constraints. If we are able to identify what are the opportunities, because we are at the similar, of course, at different development trajectories, but they are closely bundled. So closely bundled means that our opportunities lie in the same framework, and we need to do away with the structural constraints. So, when we talk about, the theoretical framework, of course, Fanon, Migoso, many of them have given, theories of decolonization theories. So, this study will draw from there, which critiques the persistence of colonial power structures in the knowledge system. So, we will be critiquing this, not of course saying that this is the only route, but this is one of the routes to, create and reimagine the knowledge that we are thinking about. It incorporates institutional governance theories to understand how universities and policies shape research collaborations. This is very important because, no single person can actually lead this. All the leadership plays a very important role within the governance structures, but then governments, so because we have moved from liberal theories from Marxism and now to the more Gandhian framework. So, our universities' policies need to reshape this kind of collaboration also. It also uses South-South cooperation frameworks like the G20, which emphasizes collaboration based on mutual benefit and shared development priorities. We have, a lot of priorities which are similar, and, most of the indexes and everything across, UN and other bodies, we say that, we have a lot of, shared development priorities. Together, these frameworks position India-Africa partnerships as potential mediating mechanisms within global hierarchies. So we in India have, a program sponsored by the ICCR, which is the SPARC. So SPARC has, a collaborative research platform where one of the partners necessarily has to be from outside India. And here is the role, of, the researchers coming together and trying to look at, issues that are there. Then we have, centers like, many centers, named after, Nelson Mandela, like the Nelson Mandela Center for Peace and Conflict Resolution at the Jamia Millia Islamia. In fact, at the school level also, we need to begin early, not only at higher education, but we need to begin very early. So there is a Ivy Nelson Mandela Award, ceremony, which is organized by several schools, especially a school in the NCR, a very famous school in NCR. Apart from this, we have international universities, the South Asian universities, which encourages, scholars from around the globe to come and study in India. And it is under the Ministry of External Affairs. And but of course, all the academic part is guided through the Ministry of Education and other this thing. Then of course we have the Nalanda International University. This is a very famous university that was, existing from the ancient times. Many scholars, including Faya and Huan Sang, many scholars, Buddhist scholars, came and resided there and studied there. So, we have tried to revive this, and we invite, scholars across, especially from Africa, to come and study in India. India is a good destination because we have a Study in India program where we give full fellowship to the scholars coming from outside India to come to India. And then we have the twin advantages of having low fees and low living cost. So both these two are two strong magnets to, for students coming, and we have definitely a number of scholars coming from Africa, and studying in India, and especially in the medical schools. So, Indian and African countries have historical experiences of colonialism and several development challenges, providing a strong basis. Because of this strong colonial experience, we of course were largely dominated by the British, but Africa has been, colonized by French, by Portuguese also, although we had some experiences, near Goa of Portuguese and near Puducherry with the French, but we did have that, so largely, but British. So we have this becomes the, the baseline for, strong collaboration. Academic partnerships include scholarship programs, faculty exchange, joint research initiatives, and institutional collaborations. So, we have, as I said, we have the Study in India program where we give full fellowship for the students to come to India and study. So that's been a real successful program. In the faculty exchange, we have the GAN, the Global Initiative for Academic Networks. We have the GAN and the GAN Plus program. Okay. So GAN Plus program where, many scholars across have come to India, especially some from Africa also. And in institutional collaborations, we have set up our IIT Madras in Zanzibar here in Africa. We had the entire globe to go to, but we chose Africa as a choice, as a priority. So that's there. Such engagements are increasingly framed with the broader discourse on South-South cooperation and knowledge partnering. So India-Africa partnerships enable, to shift research agendas. Who will shift? It is, bodies, the governing bodies, the institutions that are going to shift these agendas. They contribute to strengthening regional and inter-regional research. And these collaborations promote epistemic diversity. In India, in the National Education Policy 2020, we see a whole new vertical of Indian knowledge systems. It's not one system, but systems coming in. So we need to have a similar that, we can have something like, knowledge systems in the Africa also, and look at the convergence and divergence and put up a new agenda so that, the entire discourse, which is more Western-centric becomes more South-centric. Overall, they create opportunities for more collaborative and context-specific knowledge. And, we see that the research funding is less, so we need to have, more investment in education. So the investment, in education actually drives or is the propeller not only for education itself, but for the nation itself. We can look at the histories of all developed nations which have invested in double digits in higher education and research and have reached to this capacity. So we need to examine the different institutional capacities and research infrastructure and how to create a dynamic partnership. We have actually, under the large umbrella of soft diplomacy, we have enabled, several Indian institutions to partner and collaborate and set up institutions of different types here in Africa. So we need both long-term and short-term projects. Strengthening, we have to strengthen partnerships, autonomy in the long-term policy support, and promoting equitable authorship practices. Now, many times we see that the main author is, more important, and the second one takes in. So we have, such many points that have been covered by many other speakers here. But yes, I think India and Africa actually hold the stage because we have a historical path, and our independence movement have the moorings right here in Africa. And so we have a new pathway to development and reimagine knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I forgot to say that. Okay. No hands. Okay. Yes.
I'm Paul Abonji from KC University in Kenya. I have a question to Professor Shin, who made a very nice presentation on localization of social science research in South Korea, and he gave a very good explanation on the application of theory and whether a lot of researchers in South Korea are applying local theories or foreign theories generated from the West. So my question is, did he go deeper with this study to find out the reason why the researchers are using the theories from the West more than the local theories? Could it be that these researchers are using the foreign theories because they have been tested and proven over time, and they do not want to try these other theories that are not proven, that will not give them the result that they anticipate, and that can also be generalized, because one of the intentions of research is not just for solving local problems, but as you solve local problems, you also want to generalize and solve problems across the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. I have one question for Professor Shin. I just want you to reflect on the differences between adaptation and localization. I was just sensing the issues of localization that you have presented as it is twisting towards the adaptation. And how do you view the indigenous knowledge system? Do you referring to the indigenous when you say local theories and foreign theories, etc.? I just want you to say something in this regard. For Professor Arti, do countries have the stamina to dismantle the dominance that you have mentioned when you say decolonization of the knowledge system, etc.? Do you think that knowledge has such an identity, racial identity, ethnic identity, or whatsoever we say? So in the boundaries of the internationalization and universal system, it may be so tough to dismantle with the intent of decolonization, etc. Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you.
How is local knowledge production in your country framed, institutionalized, and supported? And how is the government or other agency supports local knowledge production in your country? And for Professor Arti, as we know, we share, India and Africa share, as you said, the same experience of this colonization. So that's one thing, to establish equitable partnerships. But what mechanisms are there to ensure the negotiation power of these two parties, even within the South, to ensure, to bring about these equitable partnerships? Because
it's okay, we got it.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to congratulate the speakers for very interesting and useful information they shared. My question is not specific to the presentation that's given, but it's a concern that I'd like to express when talking, for instance, India, Africa, or North and Africa, as if Africa is one country governed under the single rule, priority, definitions, and so on. So is there any way of disaggregating the various priorities of the countries to be reflected? Because in the final analysis, when we go to the application recommendations and so on, unless we have a specific focal points that will address Africa as a continent, the various issues of the countries may not be articulated as they should be to come up with the required solution.
Thank you, I got it.
Let's say about 70 to 80% of the professors in my university, they earn their doctoral degree from Western countries. I think they believe that their academic hometown is in the US or in European countries. So they always keep watching what the new theory developed in the West. And then they adopt the theory developed in the West as theoretical basis of their own research. That's the problem. For second question, okay, I think indigenization is our final goal as an academic researcher, but in reality, even localization is not much institutionalized as academic culture in social science research in South Korea, as I mentioned in my presentation. If we have a chance in the future, social science researchers should develop their own local theory, and then the local theory might be provide some implication for the countries who are scholars in the among the among the countries that share the similar cultural heritage, I think. But in the theory that we developed in East Asia may not work in other continents, other cultural areas, especially in social science. I think in the STEM area, it is global language and global research, but in social science research is a little bit different from the STEM research, I think.
I think you've responded to the key questions. So I think it's enough for now.
Okay, thank you.
My suggestion is, as I said earlier, we are going to produce this work in a voluminous book. So I hope people will be able to read it. Prof. Arti?
Yeah, so the first question was that, we don't have enough to actually decolonize, right? So as I said, when there are 5 stages of decolonization, we are in between dreaming and commitment. Our commitments are not, full scale, and the action is really very, very limited. So we need to work more on the commitment and work from government to government, business to government, business to business, to create an ecosystem under which higher education actually works. So we need to work on that and create more commitment and more action, so that we are able to actually fulfill our dream of creating new knowledge, new thing, because again knowledge is a global public good. So whatever knowledge we create has to be for the global public good. Also, the second question that lady had asked, that Africa is a continent and India is a country. So how do we match? So if you look into India being a country, it is also called a subcontinent. It has all the features of the subcontinent, and there are several states, and the diversity therein is much more. Yes, I understand that being a republic to take your own decisions is different from when you have a union structure and this thing. But when we are fighting, together we rise and together we fall. So we need to work out on systems in order to say, this is good for Africa, in containing, various countries, so that, a common platform is actually created to look into issues. Because in the G20 23 year, the entire African Union joined with the G20 group. So it was not each country, but the entire African Union joined with the G20 to give it a more weight and more place, in terms of the global structure.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. We are exactly at 10:30. I will give the last sermon. I write on these issues. I have been writing on these issues for a long time. As you are, I can actually describe this India, Africa, China, whatever, Brazil, Turkey. Recently I had a new one. I worry about Africa. How it can handle this polygamous relationship, what I call it in my writing. This is an academic conversation, but it's a very complicated one for an institution where you have to handle the Chinese on the left, the Japanese in the middle, and the Turkish on the left side, in one institution and in one department. And I share this story, and I will be done. We were one of this high-ranking team visiting a certain institution. I don't mention the institution, nor will I divulge the institution which done this funny stuff, which some of these stories I'm drawing from. So this was a lab, and in that lab there was nothing, but we knew that it was supported by a certain development agency. Nothing. And then we moved to the next lab. Everything was labeled, given by the people of. Every small flask, refrigerator, everything given by the people of this, the donation of that. And we asked, the kind of disparity. This particular development partner said, we don't want anything to do with this. And, as this one, we're guided by that is the kind of dynamics we operate in. If this is the policy that happens at that level, one could imagine what happens at the meso and macro level. With that sermon, I'll just say goodbye and thank you. And thank you all the presenters.
Please give a big round of applause to Professor Dando and all the paper presenters for for being so effective with the time usage. Next up, what we're going to be having is we're going to have breakout sessions, 3 breakout sessions. Papers that were postponed for today from yesterday are also going to be presented. So to make it easier for you, I would read you the paper titles so that it would be easier for you to follow. On panel 1 that is going to be presented here, there are going to be 2 papers that are going to be presented. The first one is Synergizing Digital Ecosystems and Transformative Pedagogy to Achieve Equity and Sustainability in Global Higher Education Partnerships. And the second one is Knowledge Otherwise, South-South Solidarity and the Politics of Truth. That would be presented here.
Good morning again, colleagues. Let's get straight into the presentation. I want to go to Professor Simon Ngige to do his presentation. Ngige is the director of the Center for Open and Distance Education at the KCA University in Kenya. His expertise includes learning design and technology, open and distance learning, curriculum design, educational research methods, and higher education. He has wide experience in conducting research in matters ordered in Africa, emotional intelligence and quality assurance in online and blended learning. Let's welcome Professor Simon Ngige to give us his presentation. Ngige, please, you have 15 minutes to make your presentation.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, good morning again. Today, we see higher education is at crossroads in that digital transformation is accelerating, sustainability is urgent, and international collaboration is expanding rapidly. But amid all this progress, one question still persists, and this is what I want us to have in mind as we do this discussion, and that is, are we building a truly equitable and transformative partnerships, or simply scaling existing inequalities? As we go by, we will introduce what we are referring to as DEEPS, that is DEEPS model, as a way of bringing together digital ecosystems, equity, pedagogy, and sustainability into a unified framework that supports more balanced and meaningful collaboration. At the core of this model that we are going to present is about moving beyond transactional partnerships and towards reciprocal system-driven engagement. So as we go by, please have this question in mind as we try to address it. How can our institutions move from participating in global networks to genuinely shaping them? And to proceed on for the first part, I'll invite my co-author, that is Paul, to proceed for the first part, and then I'll wind up on the second bit. Paul.
So thank you very much and good morning. As has been introduced by Professor Simon Ngige, I'm going to do the first part of this presentation. And our presentation is about bringing together this concept that is mentioned into a sort of model or framework that can guide the process of global partnership. And so let's move to the first slide. So we are taking note of the rapid transformation that is being driven now by the need for digitization, sustainability, mandate, and global collaboration. And there is shifting strategies among the learning institutions, where previously you find that the learning institutions were concentrating on training students for maybe to be able to work, to get jobs and things like that. But things have changed now. We are preparing students or learners to deal with very complicated global problems. and these including things like climate change and social inequalities and things like that. So there is therefore a need for new forms of teaching, and that's why we are talking about the transformative pedagogies. And another problem is we are facing global competition. Right now, a lot of our learners in Africa are able to access courses in top universities in the West at very minimal cost. They don't have to travel there because of e-learning, online courses, and therefore competition now, because of the kind of technology that are at their disposal, competition has come to our doorstep. So then there is also that need for alignment with the SDGs that are positioning the higher education institutions as key agents for development. Now, when you're talking about, we are making cognizance of the importance of digital transformation, the technology at our disposal, and how are you using this to help us in collaboration, to help us in improving the quality of teaching and learning and things like that. And so we see that a lot of universities in Africa, when a number of them, when they're looking at digital transformation, they are looking at it from the perspective of technology alone. But we are saying that there are still significant barriers that we see, such as uneven connectivity. There are many places in Africa where we still have a problem with connectivity. We have issues like resource gaps, there are limited resources, and then there are also issues of technology gaps. And so a lot of universities are grappling with digital transformation, with a lot of challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis. There are also issues of digital inequality and resource constraints enforcing global asymmetries and knowledge production, and then frameworks must align to digital ecosystems with equity and pedagogical innovation that we need. So in terms of transformative pedagogy and sustainability, we are looking at, what we need is, we are looking at critical thinking, interdisciplinarity, and active societal engagement in the process of training these students. Then fostering systems thinking and ethical reasoning in the process. Now, system thinking is that we must take this, look at the big picture, bring in all the concepts, the aspects together, like the proposal that we are making of this model that we call the deep S. We are bringing things like looking at the digital ecosystems, we are looking at the equity, we are looking at pedagogical transformation, we are looking at sustainability, and putting this together within a context to solve a problem. Then we should be able to link classroom outcomes with sustainable development goals, and we should be able to ensure that international collaboration yield tangible educational benefits and knowledge co-creation as a matter of a requirement in this process. So in our study, what did we discover as the knowledge gap? Number one, we looked at this and we saw that there are a lot of studies that have been done and a lot of issues are going on. Studies are looking at digital transformation in isolation, a lot of writings on digital transformation, but there is not much of digital transformation aligned to or linked to global partnership, and also as a concrete domain that should be one of the things that should be solved using digital transformation. And number two, we saw that there is limited research gap connecting digital ecosystems, inequality, pedagogy, and sustainability. So each of these items are studied in isolation and we don't see them connected as a whole. And then this fragmentation creates a critical gap, which then we want to solve by the proposed model or proposed framework. And the framework is the one that we call the DEEP S, DEEP S. That is the digital ecosystem, equity, pedagogy, and sustainability. So this DEEP S, therefore, operationalizes these interdependent dimensions into measurable, comparable, and pillars for international or institutional analysis. So what are some of the research questions that we sought to answer with our research? How do universities integrate digital ecosystems into partnerships and partnership strategies? Number 2, what regional patterns emerge in strategic priorities? And number 3, the question number 3 that we ask is, what opportunities and barriers characterize different collaboration models? And then how can equitable partnerships be strengthened through integrated frameworks that we are proposing, like the one we are proposing. Then now we come to the Deep S model that we already say that it means that we are looking at the digital ecosystem, putting it together, and then we look at how does it then yield the benefits of equity in partnership, how does it help us yield the benefits in pedagogy or transformative pedagogy, and then sustainability. So the central anchor in all this therefore must be leadership and governance, because we know everything falls and rises at leadership. So with all this, we have to make sure that leadership sits at the center of the whole thing. And then that takes me to that slide there. We are putting together our Deep S model, and we are looking at the 4 key pillars here: the digital ecosystems, where we have ICT infrastructure, we have virtual platforms, we have use of AI and things like that, and then we have transformative pedagogy on the other side, where we have innovative teaching, global curricula, and then we have skills for sustainability. Then we have sustainability, integration, and then on this other side we have partnerships and equity. On this then we are looking at the mutual resources, we look at fair collaborations, and then we look at collaborative practices. Then we come to which methodology did we use in this study? We looked at the qualitative, we used qualitative comparative documents analysis, where we looked at the strategic plans of a number of universities, because we know strategic plans depict intent, what you plan to do, what your strategy, what are you intending to do. And so we looked at the strategic plans as because they serve as the primary expression of institutions' identity and intent. And then we analyzed these strategic plans of a number of institutions to see where do they place each of these parameters that we are looking at. In terms of the sampling, we did purposive selection across 3 continents. We looked at universities in Africa, our university being one of them, KC University, University of Nairobi, Cape Town, Ghana, Rwanda, Ibadan, and those universities in Africa. We looked at a number of universities in Europe, what they are talking about in terms of the parameters that we are looking at, and then we looked at universities in United States to see how then they balance all those aspects that we are looking at in this model that we are presenting to you. Thank you very much. I'll invite my colleague, Professor Simon. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you for. So we proceed with data collection and analysis, and as all said, what we looked at was publicly available institutional strategic plans running from the year 2020 to 2035. And we focused on these public available strategic plans as they map our 5 dimensions that we are interested in building the model that we are presenting, so that we are able to assess the nature of the partnership that we are in or we are likely to engage, and whether it will be asymmetrical or symmetrical, or it will be reciprocal. So that is the issue. So the ethical aspect of it is that since the fact that we used publicly available documents, we did not breach any proprietary data or issues like that. And we also faced with a few limitations. That is the strategic plans, as was said earlier on, these are visions, these are intents, and the implementation part of it, that we may not be able to know whether that is there. But the model that we are presenting is an analytical tool too, and we did desktop research. And what we intend to do within the next 1 year is to further widen our research so that we can collect primary data through interviews and survey to supplement what we have so that we are able to have a solid framework that is able to explain the nature of the partnerships that we get into. So when we get to findings, we were focusing more on what are the strategic priorities of these institutions when it comes to the 5 pillars that we are focusing on. That is digital transformation, equity, pedagogy, and sustainability. So what is a priority among these institutions that we looked at? And when we look at African higher education institutions, partnership was almost universal across all. The partnerships as a priority was universal across all the institutions. And this was followed by sustainability and digital transformation, which came out strongly. But for pedagogical innovation, it ranked third. So in Europe, there was also universality in terms of partnerships and sustainability, the same way with those higher education institutions in Europe. And in all these 3 regions, you'll find the focus on pedagogical innovation is ranking third compared to the others. So when we look at African higher education institutions, the framework on partnerships focuses more on capacity building, access, and regional collaboration. Whereas European and US higher education institutions, the focus is on research consortia and knowledge production networks. What is the risk that we are facing here? Without intervention, Global South, higher education institutions remain peripheral contributors. So what does our model do here? We bring in operationalization of reciprocity as a measurable metrics, such that we will know by the time you get into partnerships, instead of having a symbolic MOU, we operationalize that one. And before we do that one, we will know what is the nature of partnership that we are getting into. Will it be will we be recipients, be seen more as recipient, or let's say peripheral contributors in the entirety of that relationship that we'll be getting into? And then sustainability emerges as a near universal priority in all the strategic plans that we looked at. And US and Europe higher education's sustainability is driven by alignments to regional policy frameworks and climate commitments, whereas in Africa, from the sustainability is viewed from in terms of institutional resilience, infrastructure development, socio-economic impact, and as well as capacity building. So you can see already there is an asymmetry that comes up here, in that from the US and the European partners, their focus is way up higher considered to that one of the African counterparts, whom are kind of, let's say, struggling with digital infrastructure as well as capacity building, which has already been achieved by the other counterparts in US and Europe, which begs the question, so when we get into this partnership where one partner is up there and the other partner is down here, how do we bridge that gap so that this partnership we are going to get into is reciprocal? And that is the nature of the deep edge model that we are presenting to you. In conclusion, our model moves beyond silos and connects digital, ecosystems, equity, pedagogy, and sustainability into a single strategic system. In our research, we indicated that these elements are viewed independent of each other, and we need to have a look at them from an integrated system perspective. Then our model offers diagnostic and prescriptive perspective, in that it reframes equity from an abstract principle into an actionable dimension. So our vision here is moving global higher education from asymmetrical transactional models towards equitable transformative collaborations. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thanks, Prof. Ngega and Bob for that. I suggest that we listen to the second presentation, then we follow up with questions and comments at the end. Biluk, please, if you are around, can you come up? Yep. Yeah, Biluk is a scholar whose work is engaging with the philosophy of education, African studies, and higher education reform. His research focuses on epistemic autonomy, knowledge production, and the politics of truth in African higher education. Drawing on African political philosophy, critical theory, and institutional experiences, he interrogates dominant epistemic paradigms and advocates for the orientation of African academic grounded in local histories, intellectual traditions, and social realities, almost akin to what we listened from the previous presentation from South Korea. Piruk, please, if you have 15 minutes. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. I'm now going to present you on this topic, knowledge as a wise South-South solidarity and the politics of truth. Perhaps this work is anchored on Boaventura dos Santos, Portuguese contemporary thinker, sociologist by profession, and his very influential work, Epistemology of the South, Justice Against Epistemicide. So building on this very influential work, an attempt is made to advance a claim that the South-South epistemic solidarity shouldn't be taken as a mere ornamental inclusion, ethics of inclusion, but rather part of a radical project of cognitive justice that confronts, the onto epistemic architecture of modernity itself. So as we all know, probably, modern knowledge is organizing itself along what Santos calls abyssal thinking, that institutes a regime of epistemic partition that naturalizes a monoculture of validity, which tries to convert the vast domains of the Southern experience into invisibility, into non-existence, or mere raw material for Northern theorization, thereby sustaining what he calls epistemicide. So now, reconsidering and recasting the South as a critical metaphor for the historically marginalized and produced suffering, I may argue in such a way that the South possess an epistemic advantage, not as an essence, but as a standpoint, since its knowledge is coming from the zones of disposition where the limits of Eurocentric universality become legible. So I have outlined my presentation in such a way that may address the aforementioned pointers. So this looked the outline. First, there will be a brief introductory analysis about the topic being explored, and as it is a philosophical paper, there is some important conceptual and theoretical frameworks to be grasped. So I will have a brief reflection on that, and this be followed by a brief reflection on the methodology and discussion organized along 4 important topics, and then finally some concluding remarks will also be given. But this all be presented, I hope, as precise as possible in the interest of time. Now, by way of introduction, let me start with Santos' own claim that he said there is no global justice without global cognitive justice. So the very idea of global social justice needs a priori the realization of global cognitive justice. Short of global cognitive justice, one cannot actually talk of global social justice. In that, it turns out to be rhetorical, if not performative, not consequential. So modern knowledge is sorting the world among what counts as universal, what counts as rigorous and visible. At the same time, it dismisses the other as folklore, as a mere experience or data that awaits for interpretation and theorization elsewhere, and particularly in the metropole and in the northern theorization. This actually goes along with the very ideal and scholarship of modernization itself. This modernization scholarship, and it actually builds itself on those binary positions of reality between tradition and modern, between civilized and barbaric, and between, if I have to use Hegelian classificatory schema, people with history versus people without history. So the underlying assumption is that those deemed traditional, uncivilized and barbaric are supposed to be civilized in such a way by withering away with those values which are deemed traditional. So now, the injury is not simply social or economic. I would say it is purely epistemic and ontological. So the politics of truth here, it's not merely about a matter of correspondence or internal justification. It is rather basically about institutional powers that are perpetuating the existing politics of truth. So now, if we have to see the source of solidarity and cooperation currently as it works at the level of policy and diplomacy, it is actually a good attempt that it wants to provide a horizontal alternative to North-South development relation, having its own limitations perhaps. And if you look into the epistemic dimension of it, it turns out to be very crucial and conceptually sharper. However, it is less historical and less attentive to empire and the political economy of research. So this is a gap that this research wants to feed into. That South-South epistemic solidarity is not fully theorized as it has to be, as opposed to colonial politics of truth. So it's not the solidarity I'm talking about is not only about the Southern actors may perhaps collaborate one another, cite one another, or exchange expertise. These are good, but not in themselves. But rather, South-South solidarity should be about formulating a durable form of cognitive and institutional autonomy, but at the same time very careful of not slipping into isolationism, authenticity, politics, or anti-scientific romanticism. So I can say three questions actually guide the subsequent discussion I'm going to make. The first one is, what does epistemic solidarity mean, particularly when considered as a serious concept and a generous metaphor? Second, how does abyssal thinking, as theorized by Bovenford de Santos, continue to actually structure contemporary regimes of truth? And third, and most importantly, what national arrangement deemed necessary if we want to take solidarity beyond a moral language and dealing with archives, funding, citation, and what have you. So the central argument that I want to develop here is that the South-South epistemic solidarity should be understood as a project of cognitive justice and world-making, not simply an ornamental ethics of inclusion. It goes beyond that. So as a philosophical paper, I think it needs some conceptual and theoretical considerations. So Santos' own work, the main one, Epistemology of the South, and his allied literature are really important here, and I'm going to discuss the other literature which are really informative of the discussion I'm going to make. But modern Western reason, as I've said earlier, is a system of visible and invisible distinction, whereby essentially rendering actually people and knowledge as non-existence. So the abyssal thinking is drawing a sharper line across reality. What lies beyond it is taken as superstition, backward, or simply absent. This is what Santos calls epistemicide. And he perhaps proposed a solution, a desired solution, that is ecologies of knowledge and translation, that may help us to provincialize science's exclusive claim to universality. So an important notion that I have to mention from Santos here is that the understanding of the world by far exceeds the Western understanding of the world. The Western understanding of the world can be taken as one situated way of understanding the world. But the problem is the ambition to this imperial universalism, that the Western understanding of the world becomes reason itself. So the underlying literature now, apart from Santos, we have Quijano and the idea of coloniality of power, as you may see here, and Thoreau's his idea of commonality of being, Paulo Huntongi, the African philosopher, and his important idea of criticizing ethnophilosophy and entertaining his idea of extraversion, Gatsheni, and his idea of provincializing Europe, and actually Mbembe, most importantly, and his notion of decolonizing knowledge and the question of the archive, and finally Frankel's concept of epistemic justice are all under literature that helps us to consolidate on the idea of social solidarity that I'm presenting here. So this literature altogether helps us to answer the following important considerations. The first one is denial of humanity is tantamount to a denial of epistemic virtue. And modernity itself is inseparable, perhaps. It is intricately intermingled with the global matrix that's organized along race, labor, authenticity, authority, and the control of knowledge. And colonial domination is not a distant past. It's not something that we are actually over with it. It is living with us in our body, it's actually with us in our language and in the differential valuation of human existence. And most crucially, the universities that we inherited, the universities, higher education institutions that we have inherited, couldn't make a fundamental departure, even in the post-colonial setting, from the way they were instituted. Particularly in Africa, the way the universities and higher institutions, the way they were instituted, their history of establishment, their establishment as producing a necessary manpower for the smooth functioning of the colonial enterprise is still defining their essence now in another form, and that is alienation. They are highly alienated from the existing subjective condition of the people that they are supposed to serve. So this old trait actually helps us to infer these pointers. Then comes several working definitions actually develop. When I say the South, it's not about a stable geography, but rather it's a relational and historical standpoint which has been shaped by exploitation, subalternization, and most crucially, resistance. By solidarity, we mean the establishment and an attempt to establish a durable relation of shared struggle, reciprocity, and mutual transformation. And through politics here is to mean institutional ordering, organizational ordering of what counts as evidence, explanation, and method as well. Cognitive justice is about the establishment of fair relation among different ways of knowing, but without reducing them into one metric of validity. And then finally, translation is essential as it helps us to build interepistemic engagement without forced assimilation. Now, coming to a brief reflection of the methodology, it's essentially the philosophical papers that I mentioned earlier, so you may not expect me to test a causal hypothesis through original data, but rather it's purely a philosophical discursive analysis method employed where extensive literatures are reviewed in such a way to make sense of the relevance of the central argument I'm developing here, that the need to have a South-South solidarity in a very renewed way, and examining how the corpus, the literature selected, frames South-South solidarity, cognitive justice, and the politics of truth. And the analysis also is made in accordance with the main intention of the paper. So let me pass to the first point that I want to discuss. Sorry? Okay. So we have abyssal thinking as actually an epistemic region. Abyssal thinking, as theorized by Bovalter dos Santos, is a clear account of showing how modernity organizes knowledge through division. So modern reason is not simply separating only by explicit classification. It works through making a deeper line on what can appear as real, relevant, and discussable, and what is pushed outside of intelligibility. And it's here the very notion of epistemicide arises. Epistemicide includes not dramatic acts such as distracting knowledge centers, sites of knowledge, but rather it is ordinary. It follows an ordinary procedure that seems neutrally working, but it essentially partisan. The funding templates, disciplinary canons, citation norms, language hierarchies are all seemingly working in neutral, but they are actually essentially partisan. That decides quietly what can count as a method or explanation. So now, this politics of truth is not supposed to be, okay. And And the other point that I should actually mention here is the South need to be taken as a standpoint in Northern nations. If we criticize Eurocentrism as basically as a way of avoiding reverse essentialism, then we need to be very careful of considering what the South would mean. The South is not just a region but a metaphor, throughout the paper actually, for suffering produced by capitalism, colonialism, and patriarchy perhaps. I do have a lot to discuss, but I'm being told to wrap up my discussion. Maybe actually we'll enrich the discussion in the Q&A session. So by way of conclusion, lots of points have needs to be discussed anyway. By way of conclusion, the central issue in South-South epistemic solidarity is not about underrepresentation, or it's not simply about underrepresentation. Underrepresentation might be one aspect of it, but it's essentially about the colonial organization of things itself. And modern knowledge is still operating through mechanisms that produce non-existence, which are authorized extraction and monopolized validity. So epistemicide here is not simply a post-colonial event, but rather it's a standpoint forged within histories of disposition and resistance. So modernity need to emerge as a project of cognitive justice, interepistemic translation, and institutional redesign. So at its most radical form, I would say South-South solidarities are an attempt to remake the foundation on the condition of truth itself. We may enrich the discussion further in the Q&A session. For now, I thank you very much, Chair, and my audience.
Thanks, Piroki. And apologies that we are kind of running out of time. But we have two interesting presentations that are kind of interconnected. The first one speaking to a digital design, that can articulate what the presenters think are equitable partnerships between Southern and Northern universities. And in fact, in their presentation, they tried to highlight a few universities from the North that they think synergizing these digital tools should be able to contribute to equitable partnerships. But also the second presentation, going back and saying, I think we should privilege more South-South engagements for the sake of attaining, some form of epistemic sovereignty in Africa. One of the questions that came to my mind from the first presentation is the design, the deep design. Is this something that we already have operating within KCA? And should we maybe, yes? Should we maybe think of starting small, synergizing the digital ecosystem, maybe within the region, maybe within Kenya itself, maybe within Africa itself, before we start thinking of synergizing it with what happens in the North? Do we have a clear understanding of what the capacities in terms of the digital platforms exist in Kenya before we start thinking of engaging with the North? Let me open it up. We will raise a few questions and comments, then we will come back here for final comments from the presenters. Who wants to go first?
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Zanaba. I want to ask about thank you for the presenter. The first two presenters are I want to ask them what the African Higher Education Institute frame performance. They said that one is the problem is capacity building. I accept that. Access is the second. The third one is regional collaboration. How could we collaborate this regional? Because if they are the same capacity on building, they need capacity building, they need access. How could they collaborate this higher education institution? Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah. Thank you very much, Bodata, and also thank you very much, dear colleagues, for the comments that are coming in. And to respond to your first question, whether this is something, the Deep S is an aspect that we're implementing at KCA University, simply no. What we are doing is that we are in a large-scale project on internationalization of higher education and some of its elements on effectiveness of partnerships and collaborations. So as we are progressing on, we thought of the aspect of reciprocity in these partnerships, where we do not see one partner as subject to the other. Despite the fact that there's disparities in digital ecosystems, equity, pedagogy, as well as sustainability, if both partners, or if they are more than one, if both partners are aware of the challenges early at the beginning, they are able to have a clear direction and interventions that they need to put in place so that that partnership is effective and equitable.
Yeah, thank you again, Chair, for a second chance. I had actually a lot to discuss with respect to the South-South solidarity that I was talking of. So the South needs to be considered in a very cautious way, that it is not representing a mere stable geography. Rather, it's about a collective suffering that a certain segment of humanity have experienced. And it's a way in which we can struggle against the onto epistemic structure that's dominating the current academia. But actually, propagating the idea of South-South solidarity needs to be conscious of three important considerations, actually. The first one is nativism. Some decolonial works seems to long for uncontaminated identities or pure origin, which is not tenable. As one African philosopher called Kewasi Wiredu argued, it's not possible to return in its authenticity to the pre-colonial past, mainly because of the involuntary intermixing of culture that colonialism has brought with itself. So it may not be tenable, even in the academic architecture, to actually look for such uncontaminated kind of identity. So the South-South solidarity needs to be conscious of avoiding such essentialist understanding of the South. So the South represents not a stable region, a stable geography, but it's about a collective suffering that a certain segment of humanity have faced and confronting in a right way against such kind of injustice made in the past.
Thanks, Brooke. You know, we are running short of time. Okay. We have to finish it quickly. Thanks so much for that. Let us give them some applause, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Ibrahim, for leading it so elegantly. Thank you very much for all the presenters. And I would also like to thank Dr. Ondosam for being the rapporteur. He has been taking the notes meticulously. Thank you very much for doing that. We're going to take a break and we're going to resume the session here at exactly 11:40. At 11:40. But as the presenters and the moderator and the rapporteur go down from the stage, please give them a huge round of applause. And now, the round of applause is for you for being so patient and for being so attentive for you, sir.